Hello, everyone. I believe we're on right now. Technology continues to be a challenge for us. I am going to double check as we're talking to each other on my Facebook page to make sure that we're on and everyone can see us. But I'm Dr. Paula Duren. I'm the Director of Universal Dementia Caregivers, and we are here today, as we are every Thursday, with a presentation or interview or a discussion of some kind focused on caregiving. And our goal is to make sure during these challenging times that we find ourselves in, that we are focused in on ensuring that you are having the support that you need as you are sheltering in place or even attempting to get out just a bit. We want to make sure that you are doing what you need to do. Today, our topic is caregiver burnout, which is very relevant, and we have a guest that's going to join us. But I wanted to just speak a minute about caregiver burnout. And in the process of this, and forgive me, I am still trying to confirm that it's all working. Caregiver burnout is something that happens on a fairly high rate. And our guest today, Crystal White from the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, is going to give us a lot more insight on how to deal with it. But it's such a relevant topic at this point. We wanted to just talk a couple of minutes about that because there are like 40 million caregivers out there that are providing support to a loved one in some capacity. And in that, they're worth over $470 billion worth of unpaid care. And many of these caregivers are called the silent second patient. Well, what does that mean, Paula? What it means is many caregivers are not taking care of themselves. And in today's conversation, we're not only going to understand what burnout is, we're going to understand what are some of the symptoms we should look at, what are some of the signs, what are some of the strategies for addressing, and do what we can to be of assistance to every caregiver out there. I'd like to invite my guests. I would like to welcome not only my colleague, but my friend, Crystal White, who is and Crystal, if this is wrong, let me know, the caregiving coordinator for the Detroit Area Agency on Aging. Welcome to our session today.
Thank you, Paula. I'm delighted and I am excited to be on the broadcast today to share this really, really important conversation about preventing caregiver burnout. That's correct. I'm the Caregiver Support Coordinator at Detroit Area Agency on Aging under Mr. Ronald Taylor, our President and CEO, and thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. Can you first just tell us, in the capacity of Caregiver Coordinator, what do you do? And tell us a little bit about the Detroit Area of Aging, because what we'll do at the end, we commit that what we will do is we will then talk about in more detail your services and provide some phone numbers for people so they will know how to reach you. So basically, what do you do and what is the Detroit Area Agency on Aging?
Okay, tongue twister, right?
Absolutely.
So Detroit Area Agency on Aging serves seniors that are 60 and over, 18 and over if you have a disability. And we serve the region of Detroit, Hamtramck, Highland Park, Harper Woods, and the 5 Grosse Points. That's our service region area. And we provide a variety of services for that population. As the Caregiver Support Coordinator, I just recently joined the AAA in that capacity. So we have a new program under DAAA, which originated in October 2019. And under that role, I connect with caregivers, Paula, connecting them to resources. I do a tailored care assessment with them. It looks at what their needs are as caregivers and what's going on, how much time they're spending caregiving, what type of tasks and responsibilities they have, and as well as what's going on with the care receiver or the person that they're caring for. And then I connect them, do a care plan. I connect them to resources in the community to support them, which we'll kind of talk about, a little bit later on. And we do events. I do training there. We have caregiver support education classes, and I'm one of the certified facilitators for some of those evidence-based classes that we offer for caregivers.
Wonderful. Let me just start this out with a very broad question. What is caregiver burnout?
So caregiver burnout is actually a buildup. So it's a buildup from unattended, unaddressed stress. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the signs and the symptoms. But that buildup of unattended stress turns into burnout. And that is more of an emotional, mental and emotional state for caregivers or for anyone who has been in a chronic long-term condition and has taken on a lot of responsibility and is beginning to experience emotional and physical symptoms in your body. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Okay. Now, just curious, is anybody susceptible to caregiver burnout that is a caregiver, or is it just some of us are not quite as strong as others?
Well, anybody is susceptible to get it, yes, if they are not dealing with the stress that they are handling in their caregiver capacity. Yes, they are.
So if I have a caregiver or if I run into a caregiver, what might be some signs that might suggest to me that this caregiver is experiencing some burnout?
So people may be feeling overwhelmed, not sleeping well at night, gaining or losing weight, getting not enough sleep or maybe too much sleep. They may be neglecting their own responsibilities. They may be feeling some buildup of resentment about their caregiving role. You know, I always say people did not fill out a job application or take training for a lot of the responsibilities that you have as a caregiver. And we soon assume a lot of those, chauffeur, nurse, waitress, banker, lawyer. You know, you take on a lot of roles, responsibilities as a caregiver. And so those might be some of them. Feeling irritated or angry with the person that you're caring for. Maybe you've lost interest in some of the things that you enjoy doing. Maybe an overall feeling of sadness that just seems to stay with you for an extended period of time. Sometimes you experience some physical body aches and pains. And then on occasion, sometimes people resort to misuse or abuse of alcohol or other drugs in an attempt to handle, you know, the stress that they're under in their caregiving role. Those are some of the things we want to try to prevent happening.
You know, I was reading somewhere, Crystal, that about 67% of caregivers fail to honor their own doctor's appointments. They take their loved one to the doctor, they make sure that they're eating properly, but they fail to honor their own appointments. Has that been your experience?
Yes, it was also my personal experience as a caregiver as well. A lot of the energy goes into focusing on the person who is presenting the most chronic condition, and that's the care receiver. And so all of your time and energy goes to addressing that person's needs, and you set yours aside. And I just want to add, since you brought that statistic up, a very good report, it's recent, just came out a couple of days ago with the Family AARP and the Family Alliance, Caregivers Alliance. And they were saying that 23% of Americans say caregiving has made their health worse. And why is that? Because they're not attending to their own healthcare needs.
Well, there's also, Crystal, it's such a sense of you do everything as a caregiver. I remember taking care of both of my loved ones, my parents, who died from dementia-related diseases. Mm-hmm. And you were the cook, the cleaner, the banker, the bather. You even want to build trees or build houses. You just felt like you had to do everything.
Right. Yeah, and you do, but I think you feel like you have to do everything, Paula, because a lot of times you don't reach out for help. And sometimes you reach out for help and the help is not there. Sometimes you're the only person that's in the position. A lot of people don't always have a strong support system. I was pretty fortunate. I was taking care of my mother-in-law who had been in a nursing home because she'd had 3 strokes. And she had been placed there about a 10-year period. Well, at the same time, I started taking care of my godparents who were 89 and 90, and they didn't have any children. So they didn't really have another person. And of course, at that age, they had outlived their family members, and their friends were the same age and in the same health condition. So, sometimes there's just not another person. But what we have to do is begin to expand. What's the phrase? Expand your horizon and think outside the box. And I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit of our conversation, but to look to see where are those places and who are those people that you can reach out to for support so that you don't burn out.
And the other thing, reinforcing what you just said, is that it feels like, having cared for both of my parents, there's no outlet. You might have people that come over and they might help for a minute, but you don't really feel like you have a respite opportunity. And respite meaning a place where I can go and just get away from things. And I know we'll talk a bit about that at the end, but when I was dealing with my folks, I didn't have an out. And even though you had family that would help, part of the challenge is, first of all, me accepting the help, but secondly, people being willing to help. Because what ends up happening for me, I ended up becoming frustrated with them because, and that was an additional emotional issue and energy, because they wouldn't help.
Right. So sometimes, we find in this area of work, when we've had these conversations, many times, that sometimes, Paula, we think that nobody can do it as well as we can.
That's correct. And let me say, most of the time, and let me honor those caregivers by saying, and most of the time they can't. But the issue is we still need to accept help, because you cannot do it alone.
Exactly. And what we have to do is, I think about in some of the conversations I have, I tell people, make a help jar. Get a shoe box or a mason jar or something, and write in it all of the things that you need help doing. Good. And when people ask, because sometimes we're so overwhelmed in the role, you can become some overwhelmed in the role. When people ask you, it's like deer in the head, like, I know I need help, but now I can't think exactly what I need help doing. And I also have that issue of, I don't think you can do it as well as I can. So I say, make a help jar. And when people ask you, you've written down all the little things and you put in that jar, and then, tell them to pull something out, and see maybe if that's something, and then the person do what they feel comfortable doing. Maybe it's something that we're asking them to do. They're not comfortable doing that. But hey, maybe can you make a wellness check call once a week on granny or auntie or mom or dad? You don't have to talk long, because they're not going to talk long, but maybe just make a check. How are you doing? Thought about you today. Just some very simple things we can do. And you'd be surprised in how those smaller things can add up to really be a help to the caregiver.
And I want you to know, I totally agree with that. And one of the ongoing challenge is that me as a caregiver, honoring people where they are. Yeah. Because there are some loved ones who cannot go to the hospital or who can't visit the doctor, but they could provide a meal once a week, or they could wash clothes, or they could give you 2 hours to just get outside and breathe. Part of underlying that whole thing is me being willing to allow people to help, and knowing that, of course, even though I'm going to do it the best in my mind, I do need the help. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit, since we started down that direction. You talked about some of the things you would recommend to caregivers in terms of ways to even more effectively manage the challenges in the day-to-day and those things that really could lead to burnout.
Okay. So one of the things, the very first thing that you touched on was acceptance. Acceptance really is key. Sometimes caregivers take on a caregiving role because they're thrust into it. I've encountered, and I'm sure you have also along the way, some caregivers did not have very good relationship dynamics with the person that they are now responsible for taken care of.
Yes.
And so that is acceptance of the role of a caregiver is huge. I think anytime you can be more open in your mind and in your heart to take on the role, that helps actually to lessen the burden of doing the work in the role. And it kind of takes some of the weight off of your own self. Embracing your caregiver choice is also helpful. Looking for the silver lining in things. Everything is not going to be, you're not going to do everything 100% correct, everything right. Like I said, you didn't fill out an application. There was no job description to take on this job as a caregiver. But find the small victories in things. You know, if a person is not eating well today, we're not going to continue to try to keep forcing them to eat, but but did you eat Jello? Did you get them to take some Ensure? Did you have a little bit of liquid today? Did you have a little bit of fruit today? Nope, it wasn't a whole meal. How about we had a good conversation with our caregiver on yesterday, but today nothing. I just got a hello. Celebrate the hello.
So
So
Crystal, what you're saying to me is we have to learn to manage our expectations.
exactly. That's perfect. That's the perfect way to say it. And then I say focus on the small things that you can control. You can't control everything. And I just think a lot of times, just we as people, as part of our nature, we want to be in control. And in caregiving, it'll teach you, very early. It's just going to be some things that you're not going to be in control of, and you're just going to have to accept and then figure out how to balance in that area and then keep it moving forward. Because the most important thing is to take care of the person and then also to take care of yourself. Almost in reverse, take care of yourself and in this conversation so that you can take care of the person that you've stepped up to the plate to take care of.
Well, and let me reinforce that because sometimes people will say, well, I didn't step up, no one else would take it.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be true how it started.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is this: once you make the decision that I'm going to do this, that brings a level of peace in your own spirit that I am going to do this. I'm not fighting with myself. I'm not fighting with anyone. And if you choose that you can't do it, that needs to be said out loud to the family so some decisions can be made on who will actually be the primary caregiver.
Right, exactly. And or if there's not a family person, because remember, a lot of times that's the case.
That's correct.
That goes back to something I've heard you speak about before in your trainings, boot training, build a care team. And I think that's really important too, especially if you are early on taking on a caregiving role. Find some individuals that are trusted, that you can count on, and begin to build a care team. And maybe you can share a little bit about what a care team looks like. Who would be some good people to have as a part of your care team? Maybe even if in fact you don't have family members to help you.
And oftentimes you may not. And the essence of that piece, following your lead, is that you can make a decision that I'm just going to struggle through this myself. Mm-hmm. But that has a high cost.
It does.
Other than finding some people who are like-minded, who understand the importance of this work, because I don't think, this is Paula speaking, there is a more noble job than providing and giving life support to someone who needs you. Absolutely. And I always think about the power of being selected for that role, because not everyone deserves to be given that opportunity.
Correct.
So Crystal, so tell me some more about things that we should do. You talked about managing expectation, building care teams, understanding my role as a caregiver. What else would you tell us about ways to manage burnout?
I would say don't let caregiving take control of your life. Now, is that easier said than done? Absolutely. But remember, caregiving is a job, and just like our regular jobs, we have to find balance and we have to find ways to work situations out so that we can, move forward. not letting caregiving take over your life means you have to pick up some of the things that you were doing previously if you're able to. Like now, let's just say, for instance, if you were a person who worked out a lot, now you can't get out to the gym. You can't, go to places where you would normally go to get some of those things done. Well, now everything pretty much you can find online, you can find on YouTube. Go to YouTube, pull up some exercise videos. When your loved one is taking a nap or resting or sleep, pull out that YouTube video, exercise video, go online and, give yourself a 30-minute workout, so if it's reading, you used to love to be a reader, you're an avid reader. Now you're not reading as much. When you get a little break, go in the bathroom and still away for 10 minutes if you need to, to do that. But you have to try to figure out some ways that you can do some of the things that you have always had an interest, even if you have to minimize those things, but they will help provide some balance back into your life. And the balance part is really, really important. And again, I talked about, celebrating the small victories. Even imagine how your loved one would respond to you if they were helpful, if they were healthy. So kind of looking at getting the appreciation that you need. I was very fortunate because my husband was very supportive of me as I was helping to take care of his mom, who was my mother-in-law, as I referred her to, not my mother-in-law. But I was working full time, going to the nursing home several times during the week. We would alternate. Then I was going over to my godparents' house, taking care of her and him until they passed. And that continued over a good 15-year period. So that builds up a chronic place of caregiving over a long period of time. And that's kind of where the burnout can begin to happen. When you're doing something for a long extended period of time, when we take on caregiving, we think it's just going to be for, a couple of months or, maybe a year, but many times, caregiving goes on and on and on as people are living longer. And they are needing people to be there to support them on their journey. And I always say you're on the caregiving journey until you're not on it anymore.
Let me reinforce the concept of journey. That says that there is no necessarily arrival point. I think oftentimes those of us that are those A types that were in corporate and all of a sudden we're now finding ourselves in a totally different place, feel like there's something you're supposed to check off. And I'm supposed to get to wherever this place is, and then I've arrived. I think, and when I think about dementia in particular, I think it's you just walk the journey with the loved one, and you're providing the support necessary. But you get such, for me, as I reflect back, I remember receiving such gifts. My mother said to me once, she said, "I don't know you, but I like your spirit."
Wow, how precious is that?
Isn't that precious?
Yeah.
But unless you were looking for that, as you had indicated, because the next day she may curse me out. Right. So I had to accept that I make it some love Monday. But see, I even viewed the cursing as love, because I also viewed it as their way of still trying to exist, still trying to be there. And so if I framed it that way, I didn't take it personally.
Right, right. And then also I like to include, applaud your own efforts.
Yes.
That's like give yourself your own pat on the back, so to speak, because it's a job, and sometimes it's very challenging, and you may not even feel like it every day, but you get just like your job sometime, but you get up and you do it to meet, and I would say to meet the needs of the person. But in addition to that, you also must meet your own needs as well.
That self-sacrificing is wonderful, but I think about what the airlines say is that put your mask on first in the event of trouble. Put your own mask on first, which means you are now protected and secure. Then put the mask on of the loved one. So you talked a bit about managing expectations. You talked about pulling a team of people together, a support team. You talked about looking at those things that are in your control. And any other things pop for you that make sense? One of the things I was thinking about, and maybe you could talk to how you engage people on this issue. Caregivers need to pay attention to how they're feeling. Our feelings are good clues about what's going to happen with our behavior. Because some people say, well, I'm under stress. And what I try to get them to do is walk backwards to see, where did that start? What was I telling myself? What kinds of expectations did I have in my head? So have you seen that your caregivers are really attending to their own emotional and psychological needs? Because I think if you don't do that, that also leads to burnout.
Not very well is the answer. Not very well. And let me, that you said that, let me say something. In the assessment, I always find this really interesting. One of the questions or sections in the assessment is called identity discrepancy. And caregiver identity discrepancy is where on one hand, let's say on our right hand, we have our values and our beliefs and our expectations about how something should happen, how it should go, how it should work. And then on the other hand, we have our behaviors and it's what we actually do. And sometimes the behaviors don't match up with what
That's
we
right.
believe the expectations. So if you had on your right hand index finger the beliefs and the values and expectations, and on your left hand finger you had your actual behavior, you had a rubber band around both of those index fingers, and you stretched them apart. You know how you stretch that rubber band apart? That stretching part, the further apart that is, that's the discrepancy. So what you want to try to do is bring that discrepancy in, reduce the discrepancy so that your behaviors are lining up with, you know, your values and your expectations, and your beliefs about your caregiving role. And again, that's embracing your caregiver identity.
Well, and as a psychologist, that's one of those things we say, your thoughts define your actions.
Absolutely.
And I think the Funkadelics said it even before that, free your mind and your rest of your body will follow.
And your rest will follow, right? Exactly, right.
And I guess if from your heart of hearts, if we were going to give our caregivers, of which I call my loved ones at this point, any other insights, what pops for you? Because the next thing I want you to talk about.
I lost your. I lost your sound, Paula. I lost your sound. Nope. Can you hear me though? You can hear me. I don't know what question you asked me. Let's see. Start video. Is that better? I got it. Services. I just love it. I love the technology. We just work around it. Just work around it. So, so some of the resources resources, there are two things, if you can hear me clearly. So there are two main things when I talk to caregivers, that the first two things they really inquire about is caregiver education. People want to know, how do I learn how to work with or deal with my loved one or the person I'm taking care of? The other thing that they look for is resources, like what's out here in the community that can help me in this role. So the caregiver education classes, number one, we do provide those starting at Detroit Area Agency on Aging. We have Powerful Tools for Caregivers, which is a caregiver class that provides skills and strategies for individuals in a caregiver capacity to manage some of those day-to-day issues that they have in their caregiving role. We also do Creating Confident Caregivers, which also is a 6-week class that helps individuals taking care of someone with dementia in the same capacity as Universal Dementia Caregivers does, but it's a 6-week class that's stretched out, as is Powerful Tools for Caregivers 6 weeks as well. We also provide, and let me add this, we just found out that we'll be able to do our Creating Confident Caregivers on Zoom. So on a virtual format, and we'll be offering those as opposed to 6 face-to-face classes. They will be 3 webinars that we will be bringing that up. I'm working on that this afternoon so we can get that up and going. But also, you know, I refer a lot of individuals to Universal Dementia Caregivers. We have wonderful resources also through Henry Ford Health System Caregiver Program, Elder Care Caregiver Solutions with Miss Marilyn Lawson. We have the Hannon Center. There's just, you know, so many. And then in terms of care for the caregiver, your physical and your mental, emotional care, we have in the community our wellness, community wellness service centers. And in those community wellness service centers, we offer our evidence-based classes. So they're fitness classes, enhanced fitness, walk with ease, a matter of balance. And again, the other classes that we do for caregiver education. And I'll just say briefly, those are held at Northwest Activity Center with NSO staffing, the People's Community Service Center in Hamtramck, the Helm in Grosse Pointe Farms, and St. Patrick's Senior Center is also our closer east side location. And LaSalle, that is a new center that we just added in the Southwest Detroit area, LaSalle. I almost heard you. Can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can I, well, let me say this. Nope. Okay. Okay.